I'm back on Route 66 today, and I'm going to be exploring 11 places that are either towns or used to be towns or are ghost towns between Carthage and Springfield, Missouri. These are, like I said, all on Route 66. There's a lot of interesting history, a lot of old buildings. If you're ever on Route 66, maybe these are a couple places you want to stop. We're going to start on the western part of that trip and head east, and we're going to start in what you could call the capital of these, stretch of towns would be Avilla, Missouri. There's about 100 people remaining. It's an old town, and there's a lot of history. You can find a lot about this town online, but a few of the main things are it was very divided during the Civil War. So there was a lot of infighting here, and it was even a Union militia was set up in this town to deal with Confederates, and so a lot of battles. And then they survived that, and it became a growing town in the late 1800s. Probably was its biggest time. Hard to know population figures from that time because it's so hard to track those kind of things. And a lot of things happened, between the Civil War and then kind of when it started to decline after the Depression. But there was a lot of businesses here. In fact, right behind me, this used to be the bank, and it was robbed, kind of an infamous gang, the Irish O'Malley gang. They combined with another gang called the Ozark Mountain Boys, and they combined to rob this bank behind me in the 1930s. And so, a lot of things like that happened in a lot of history that, like I said, you could go online and do some research. It's certainly a cool place to check out. A lot of old buildings, a couple businesses are here. Definitely, if you're on Route 66, this is a must-see stop along the way. Plew, Missouri, just a couple miles down the road from Avilla, is really nothing anymore. There's a nursery behind me, and that seems to be the main thing here. There was a post office open for a few years in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then it probably had a little bit of business and commerce during the Route 66 years, which basically are from 1926 until 1958 here. 1958 is when they built I-44, so it bypassed 66, and now 66 and 96 are kind of combined on one road here. So probably a little bit of business there, and then after 1958, I'm sure that whatever businesses that were here for travelers stopped, and now it's just a rural area. Rescue, Missouri is very similar to Plew. There's not much left, actually. A little bit more, I guess. Behind me, I think this was an old garage, and There's another building or two, but basically it had a post office around the same time, late 1800s, early 1900s, and had some Route 66 businesses. I think there was a camp that was here, and other than that, though, it's now just kind of a little community for people to drive through on Route 66. Probably the main thing to see in the town here is the schoolhouse, which is where I'm sitting on the steps of. This was a schoolhouse built in the 1880s, and they've restored it. I think it fell into disrepair, and then they've fundraised to get it restored. There's also another really cool building that was a former hotel, and a two-story hotel, stone building. So you can see we're real close to the busy Route 66 road. And something that's interesting is the frontage road that kind of comes just off Route 66 and along the town. That was the actual original Route 66 from 1926 to 1955. And then in 1955, they made the current Route 66. So there's just a few feet off the road is this frontage road. And so kind of an interesting little bit of history that was the original Route 66, and they decided to just move it over a few feet. Albatross is right on a busy corner here on the corner of Route 66 and Route 39. They intersect here. Albatross was named after a bus company called the Albatross Bus Company, and it was laid out in 1926, which happens to be the same year that Route 66 was started. So I'm assuming this was because it was an intersection of some different roads that led to different towns, that they put some, places to fuel up and get some services here, taking advantage of Route 66. Now there's only a couple buildings. There's this gas station that's a newer looking gas station that's abandoned or crumbling. There's not a whole lot else left in Albatross. Heatonville was one of the older towns along this drive that we're doing today. It was kind of settled in the 1860s. It officially became a town in the 1870s. It was originally just named Heaton after I think the founder of the town, and then eventually a couple years later they extended it to Heatonville, and then had a post office for just a short period of time. This building behind me actually, I believe, was the post office, and it became a garage after the post office was gone. There's not much left of Heatonville. There's plenty of houses. It's a very busy place along Route 66. So to get here, you got to kind of take a little bit of a jog off of the main Route 66 as in today, and this was the original 1926 alignment. So it's kind of tucked here off into the rural area a little bit. Spencer, Missouri is really one of the truly special places along Route 66. The history of it is it was settled in the 1860s, and it, you know, had some stores, and you know, it was just a kind of a small little community for a long time. And then when the plans for Route 66 was going to happen, someone bought it, tried to you know, take advantage of the Route 66 business, and then, you know, it was a small town, small community for 30 or 40 years. But then after they realigned Route 66 and bypassed this town, obviously the businesses, you know, people weren't stopping at the businesses anymore, so the town crumbled. Later on, someone bought this area, bought the buildings, bought the land, and started restoring it. So these buildings are restored to look like what they used to be. One of the very unique parts about Spencer, Missouri is that the road right here is one of only 4 places on Route 66 where the original road is still there, hasn't been widened, hadn't been resurfaced over. So this was the original road, the way it looked like when Route 66 began in 1926. Paris Springs Junction was kind of the second settlement in this town, or in this area. About a half mile from here was Paris Springs. Going to go to that next. And Paris Springs Junction kind of popped up along Route 66. It was more convenient because of the Route 66 area, and then had a few things: gas station, a couple places to stay for people traveling the route. And then, like all these other towns, when the route got bypassed by the highway, it definitely fell into disrepair and became abandoned rural area. But it has been restored. I'm going to show you the new, I guess, gas station, I guess you would call it, but it's a little tourist area for people to check out. It's really beautiful, spectacular. Along with Spencer, it's just a couple miles down the road. These are two of the definitely must-sees along Route 66.
This is what 100 years of mess looks like.
I think it looks beautiful.
And this here is what I call sensory overload.
Yeah, there's so much to look at. So if you're exploring Route 66 and you go to Paris Springs Junction and didn't know about Paris Springs being right here down the road, probably worth a slight little detour to check it out. And when Route 66 came along, the town that was here in the late 1800s, early 1900s, kind of disappeared. Halltown is still a town. It's got about 100 people, and it has survived kind of the coming and going of the Route 66 heyday. A lot of old buildings right through the middle of town. That's kind of where you want to focus if you're coming through here. Definitely a place you want to stop. But there's, an active post office has been open since the 1870s, and so it's basically a nice town with a lot of historical places to check out. There's not much left of Plano, Missouri anymore, except there's a very interesting building right here, and then across the street there's another one. That was a gas station, I believe, and this was some sort of convenience store or merchandise store, place to get, things, a grocery store or something like that. But there really was not much to Plano. It was more just kind of a stop along the way on a busy road, and Route 66 helped, elongate its life for a little bit, and then once it realigned and bypassed here, these places became abandoned. So very cool structure right behind me, definitely worth stopping and checking out. Final stop on this Route 66 excursion is in Yeakley, Missouri, and Yeakley was I'm not even sure you could consider it a town at one point. The main thing about Yeakley was the church that's behind me, and this area had a church since the 1880s on, and I think it was probably reconstructed a couple times, but John Yeakley was the guy who kind of started this settlement and had some other people move here, and then they built the church. And all that's left now is the church and then the cemetery. So it's certainly a very beautiful part of Missouri, and a apt place to end today's road trip.